to learn and stay with it. When I first took Spanish, it was probably eighth grade, ninth grade. I took it in high school. I actually carried it over into college. I thought, I had no idea I was going to be a police officer. I just you have to have foreign language, so Spanish was something I enjoyed doing. I was actually from Phoenix, Arizona, so there was a lot of Hispanic population that I grew up around. I didn't know if I'd ever end up going back that direction again, so I just kind of stayed with Spanish through college. That was the end of my Spanish lessons. I quit taking Spanish after college. I actually got into a different career, different ideas, and then lo and behold, I ended up being a police officer. Never thought that Spanish would come back and be so prevalent for me to know. And so it's not that I'm fluent in Spanish, because by no means, it's just like math, it's just like reading and writing. It's everything you guys are learning in school. If you don't keep up with it along the way, through high school, through college, and even beyond, your math skills will deplenish. It's still there, but you can probably figure things out and figure out the rules on how to solve problems, but it gets forgotten. Same with Spanish. I didn't realize how much I had actually forgotten. And then when Mrs. Lynn, she bought me basically for the day. I don't know how much you spent on me, but it was like maybe 20 bucks, 20 bucks for the day. I started realizing, wow, I didn't really know as much as I thought I would know about Spanish, but the important things I did remember. The importance of understanding somebody else's culture. The importance of understanding other people and being able to communicate with them, whether it be by the words we speak or the actions we do. And so that's what this little presentation is about. And I actually shared this with some officers in the police department, and some of them actually went back and started studying Spanish even more to get more fluent with it, because then we started realizing how much of a population we actually have even here in Liberty, Missouri. So, Spanish and law enforcement. It's not about remembering the words or knowing the words. It's about getting the words, getting them into your head, learning it, to get it into your head, because deep down inside, those words are still there. Every once in a while, somebody from a Latin American or a Spanish-speaking person will come into my world, and I will not know a word that they're saying, but there might be that one key little word that sticks out. And it's because I took the years of Spanish and stayed with it. So like policia. When somebody says that, I know they're looking for me. They're not looking for just somebody at a gas station. They're not looking for somebody just to give them a cheeseburger or to help them out with something else. They're looking for me. So knowing those words, knowing the words that come along with it. And the thing is the Spanish-speaking population is actually, they're the second largest ethnic group in America. And so whether you talk to them frequently or not, the odds of coming across somebody in your lifetime, whether it be as a police officer, if you get into the medical field, if you get into missions, if you work at a bank, anywhere you go, there's a great probability that you are going to have somebody that speaks Spanish coming into your world. And now you can just say, I don't understand you, and not help them out at all. But if it's an emergency, like in my case, I don't have that choice. So I do step up. And so we learn how to deal and communicate with everybody. And Hispanics, especially, being the second largest ethnic group in our society, they are actually a little over 2% of our population in Liberty. There's actually approximately about 650 Spanish-speaking people in Liberty, Missouri. And in fact, I have one in my neighborhood. One in my neighborhood, and nobody is able to communicate with them in my neighborhood. Now, when they're needing help, they'll come to me and they'll ask for something, and we're able to communicate enough to where I can help them out. I do go to their house if there's snow on the ground to help them out, because that's the right thing to do. But the communication is by my actions, not necessarily my words. But as a police officer, I have to be able to communicate with those people, because sometimes they're in times of need. Now, most of the Spanish-speaking population in America are here legitimately, and the legitimate reason they're here is to work. In other parts of the world, in South America, money is tough to come by. Work is hard to get. And the work that they do get, it doesn't pay very well. So they can come up here into America, and so that they can make money. In fact, they can work up here in Liberty, Missouri, doing a job for 1 year, and they can go back to South America. They can go back to Mexico. They can go back to their homes and take care of their families for up to 2 to 3 years. In fact, what we saw in Liberty when I was working patrol, we actually have a group of immigrant workers migrating up here to work in Liberty, do a job, and they actually lived in a house, and I'll talk about that house here in just a little bit. They would work in there for about a year or two, and then they would leave. And then you would not see them for a year or two, and then you'd see them back. Now, the workforce, I put some charts up here, and I'll kind of talk to them. Most people don't realize the work that they do. The Spanish-speaking population, they do the jobs that most of us don't like to do. They do farmhand work. They do laborious work. They work in the factories. They work in the factories that nobody else wants to work in. For instance, they work in Tyson Foods. How many of you guys like chicken? Yeah, chicken nuggets, fried chicken, baked chicken. We are a chicken-eating population. We love our Chick-fil-A. How many of you guys have ever cut up a chicken? You've actually cut one up? On a farm? Do you live on a farm?
Well, my friends do.
Okay. Very few people in our society will go into the nasty world of cutting up chicken. We don't like to. We don't like to get the smell, the parts of the chicken. But somebody that wants to feed their family, where they can come up and come into a factory and cut up chicken, something that we all want, they can come up here and make, in 1 year, enough to take care of their family for 3 to 5 years. So they'll come up and they'll work those jobs. They'll work your jobs. In fact, Tyson Foods actually was sued by the federal government a few years ago, several years ago. They were actually sued because what they did was they went into the Tyson Foods factories and they realized that they were undocumented workers. They were people that were just coming across the border, coming up here and working. And they wanted to make money for their families. And so Tyson Foods was actually sued by the government, and they were actually fined for bringing up these people to come and work. They didn't bring them up, they just came. And they offered them the position because they would have some type of documentation to show that they are capable of working. So the government fined them. And Tyson Foods said the simple thing. Fine. America wants chickens. Every single one of you guys wanted chickens. Only one of you have ever cut up a chicken. And so they said, fine, we'll take, either we don't produce chickens and process chickens, or we'll take our chicken factories south of the border to where people that will do the job will work and do the job. And obviously, we still have Tyson Foods in America because our government realized we need these people. We need these people. Now, Tyson Foods, like most of the companies in America, they try to get them documented so that they can work legitimately and legally. But they do. They come up through our cities, and here's how they end up in places like Liberty, Missouri. A lot of them, they actually migrate from Mexico up to the farms in northern parts of the United States for summertime crops. And so the main corridor for them to get to those northern states is right up basically the I-35 corridor, which is the highway that runs right through the middle of Liberty, Missouri. And it comes right through Kansas City. And so they come up through that corridor, and they come up and they're going up there for work. But unfortunately, like I said, a lot of these people are coming from places where there's not a lot of money. I've found people have called me as a police officer, and they said, hey, there's somebody out in a parking lot with a family. There's a family, and I'll go out there, and it was a family of Hispanic-speaking people, and all they were doing was going up to go to those farms to work. They had small children. They had everything they owned. They were in these cars. We helped them out. They liked this area. They liked staying here. They wanted to be here. And those that are legal, those that get the documentation, and they actually come back and they stay in our area. They stay in this area because it is safe. It's more secure for them, and it's more prosperous. Sometimes it is, we just help them out because they ran out of gas. Again, a very poor society that they're trying to just make money for their family, so they'd run out of gas, so we'd get them gas. We'd get them the things to move them along, either going up to work or to come back from work. So every once in a while I would hear words. I would hear words like ayúdame. Now again, my Spanish is not the most fluent like it used to be back when I was on patrol, because I've been off patrol now for a little over 12, almost 13 years. So I don't use it on a regular basis. So my Spanish is not fluent, but when I hear these words, when I heard these words that I had learned in high school and college, I would hear it on occasion, I'd be, oh, they need help. They need help. So that's why it was important for me to keep taking and absorbing more and more in. Because now that, even after 13 years of not getting it hardly at all, because I'm in the schools where I don't speak to very many people that speak Spanish. I don't speak on a regular basis, and so I don't remember. But if I'm out on the street and I hear those words, I can help them because I know they need help. Understanding their cultures. Not only in a Spanish class do you learn the words to communicate with people, but our actions of communicating with people is important. For instance, understanding the Hispanic population, typically they're a culture, they're family oriented, and they like to be accepted for who they are, but also what they have. They don't have a whole lot, so when they do have anything, they like to make sure it's sharp and clean. Their shoes are spotless. They are shining to get that acceptance from their friends, their family, and society. That's why whenever as a police officer, I know not to touch somebody that has a real sharp pressed shirt that appears to speak Spanish. Until after I've talked to them and they've greeted me, then I'll reach out and touch them. Because I'm going to accept them, that's what they want. But if I put a wrinkle in their shirt, it's taken away from their dignity and what they want me to see. They do get very close. They do get very close to people. Where us as Americans, most Americans, we like space. We like space, but the Spanish population, even my neighbors that live right around the corner from me, they walk in a very tight group as a family everywhere they go. Basically almost hand in hand, but there's no hand connection. And when I walk by them, they come up right up into my space to say hi or to greet me. Whereas we in our society, as the rest of Americans, we like our space. So understanding that their culture, learning that in class, made me appreciate them. And again, the words, emergencia. Emergency. Did I say it right? Well, was it close enough?
Emergencia.
Can you guys repeat it?
Emergencia.
Now you have that word stuck in your head. It's going to be in there forever. So hopefully you'll learn it and keep it and know that if you do come across somebody that is coming through through your world and they are looking for help and they are saying, you can tell them, you can ask them if it is an emergency, or they might be saying it to you that it is an emergency. Can you make a difference? Like I told you, there was that house that we had in Liberty where a lot of people would come up, typically it's men that will come up and work for their families. It'll be the sons, sometimes the fathers. They will come up and work. We had this one house in Liberty where we had about, on average, 6 to 7 young men that would work in our community. They'd work in our restaurants. They would work in our farm around Liberty. They would work and the thing is, some of these people, you would see them at a Mexican restaurant, and the next day you would see them at a Chinese restaurant. They don't care where they can get the work. They don't care where they work, as long as they're making money, as long as they're working. And as a group of young men in one small area, there was sometimes problems. They would get in arguments. Sometimes they would drink too much, and we'd have to go to their house because of the disturbances that were going on. There was one person that owned that house. And he lived in the house. And if you went into his house, and he would let you come into his house and talk to him, but we knew that we didn't go to the problem first off. The first thing was going to him, because he would handle most everything, because he was the hierarchy. He was the one in charge. He was the one that was responsible for the house, which meant he would actually make sure that whatever we wanted done with those younger men, those younger people under his control, he would make sure that they were following the rules as they're supposed to do. Communication and compliance. There's difference when it comes for law enforcement. Communicating with somebody that is Spanish speaking actually has gotten a lot easier for us. I got called out, it was about a month ago, there was an accident at Hy-Vee. And the person ran into this lady, their car actually came out of park and rolled back and hit this lady's car. They did not speak any English. They did not speak any English at all. And so somebody that knew that I had taught this to the department at one time said, hey, can you come over and help communicate with these people? And it was an emergency, and it wasn't a compliance of making them do something. It was just about communicating with them and somebody that did not speak Spanish. Technology is amazing. I couldn't get the words out. I couldn't talk to them. In fact, one of the officers that actually went on to learn Spanish more so after hearing about this lesson, he came out also and he was having a hard time. So I said, hey, let's use technology. So now every officer has Google Translator on their phone to help us with communication. So it does make it easier. But just like in this classroom, I turned it on, there's no reception. There's no reception. So either I have to get somebody to go with me to where I do have reception to be able to fluently communicate with them, or I have to find another way to get that translation. Now compliance is a lot different. Compliance, I'm not getting my phone out. As a police officer, compliance is stop doing what you're doing. Put your hands up. You're under arrest. Getting compliance, getting somebody, and I don't take out my phone. Hey, hold on just a second. Hold on one moment there, sir, please. Please hold on 1 minute while I get out my phone so I can translate manos arriba. Manos arriba. Manos arriba. Hands up. Somebody speaking Spanish would know to get their hands up. I don't need to know at that point in time. All I need, that's compliance. And now I can communicate with the person by either through my Google Translator or whatever I need to do. Does that make sense? But knowing a few words, just enough to know. An officer in Texas, he actually lost his life because he didn't understand compliance and communication. He started talking with a group of Spanish-speaking passengers in a vehicle, started talking with them, and there was a few words that came out, and we learned from the video that in law enforcement, knowing those key words, staying with it through high school and college, just to get those key words, those four individuals that were in the vehicle were actually saying to each other, get your pocket knife out, get your blade out, get ready to hit him. And he was, do you speak English? Step over here, come over here. And they're telling each other right there in his face that we're getting ready to cut you and take you down. And unfortunately, he had no concept of what they were saying. So that's why in law enforcement, we encourage all of them to at least get a foundation. It started for me, again, in high school and in college, having that foundation. Alto, stop. Stop doing what you're doing. Again, those words of compliance. Now, dealing with the Hispanic criminals is a little different because we do have that communication barrier sometimes. But fortunately for us, we do have a great resource. The federal government is based out of Kansas City here. INS, they actually have an officer who actually lives in Liberty. So anytime that we had an issue with compliance, trying to get somebody to follow our directions, we would call him out and he would be able to talk to us. One of the stories I had, I was working on patrol, I was driving around in a police car. Everybody know where 291 is going towards Independence? As I was going down 291 one day, I see this guy riding a bicycle. He's riding a bicycle and he just veers off and goes down into the ditch. and tumbles and crashes in this ditch. So I'm like, wow, what's wrong with this guy? So I get out, he's speaking Spanish. And he's mumbling, obviously intoxicated. And I recognized him, remember that house? I had recognized him as one of the members, one of the people that lived in that house. And so I got him up, I got him in his bicycle, and I put him in the back of my car. I put the bicycle in my trunk, and it was sticking out of the back of my trunk. And I'm like, he was intoxicated, so I get him in the back seat of my car and told him I was going to take him to safety. So I take him back up to the police department, and he's talking to me, but I can't understand everything he's saying. It's mumbling, so it's even more difficult. And just as I pull into the parking lot, the garage of the police department, a guy comes running by, and he says, "Hey, that's my bicycle. That's my bicycle." So I had a thief. I had somebody that had stolen a bicycle. What he had done was, he was up working at a place, and he wanted to leave and go back home. And how did I find out? I called my friend from INS. At first, I could not even communicate with him because he was not speaking any English at all. His words were broken. I couldn't understand the mumbling. He seemed intoxicated. So my friend from INS, he actually got on the phone with him. I gave him the phone, and my friend, just for a few minutes, talked to him over the phone from INS, and he gave me the phone back, the suspect did, and he said, "He'll communicate with you now." A lot of times, what we find in law enforcement is that a lot of these people that say they don't speak English actually do speak English. And he was actually able to answer my questions after INS told him that he was going to be in more trouble for resisting arrest and being against us. So we have the resources to communicate. We have those resources, but keeping the key words, having the fact of still being respectful to him. I took care of him. I took care of his bicycle because it was his property. I made him feel like he was important, and so he cooperated with me 100%. And in reality, he was not here legally, and he was trying to find a way back home to get back home. So I don't know how far he was going to ride that bicycle, but he ended up getting his wish. And unfortunately, so many of them Hispanic people that are in our society, they are actually probably one of the top. They are the top populated by percentage of their of them in our federal prisons. Now the numbers are a little deceiving in this aspect. Numbers are a little bit deceiving in that the Hispanic population, they actually fill more of our federal prisons than any other ethnicity in our society. They are even more so than blacks and whites combined. The reason why is because INS. INS actually, they are the ones that put a lot of people in prison or detained in jail, and they handle all of those that are illegal, those that don't have documentation, those that don't do illegal. So the numbers are kind of deceiving in that aspect of it. But majority of those that are law-abiding, they have their documentation, the numbers are actually opposite. They were the fewest that are in our prison systems. They are the fewest in our prison system because they actually are here legally, and they do the hard work. They do the things that all the rest of us do. And they are so family-oriented, they stay out of those troubles. But unfortunately, there are those that are juvenile delinquents. Can somebody say juvenile delinquents in Spanish for me?
Good.
Pretty good. It's neat how somebody with the capability to educate us can make it in such simplest terms, in simplest ways for us to understand the words and be able to speak the words. But the reality is that we do unfortunately have some juvenile delinquents in our society that are Spanish speaking. In fact, one of the worst gangs in America. Has anybody ever heard of MS-13? We don't see a lot of MS-13 in Liberty. In fact, we have only seen tags of MS-13 on very few occasions, but they are in the Kansas City area. There's actually 10,000 documented members of MS-13 in the United States. So it's not that big of a number of those in the gang. But like then understanding again, by understanding the culture, understanding them by learning what I learned in class, I know why they are so dangerous. They come from a very poor society. They're just trying to gain. They are also very loyal to each other, and they want to get recognition and acceptance from their peers. And so they will do whatever somebody asks them to do. And so they are a very violent gang in America. But they're just living who they are. They're living what they've been taught. And their ethnicity is coming out, just being in a very dangerous way. Remember, alto policia. Stop, police. Knowing those few words. Again, just being able to communicate those few words. Now, I will not probably use these words again in the school setting. But just like that person that was in the accident at Hy-Vee, and the one that I could not translate very well until I got my Google Translator out, my lieutenant, the one that had the training, he used words like altos, stop. So he would back up. He would stop doing, so he would know that we're there to help. How many of you guys have ever traveled abroad? None of you guys have ever gone anywhere? Not yet? You haven't gone out of the United States? Oh, okay. How many of you have ever gone to Mexico? You gone to Mexico? Okay, very good. Very good. Traveling abroad. Again, another great reason why to understand a language and a culture. What the federal government they recommend you doing, anytime you travel outside the United States, go on to the federal government's website and actually look to see what the laws are. What the laws are, what crime statistics are in those areas, and make sure that you know who you need to talk to in the case of emergency in those areas. Everywhere in the United States and in the world, we have close proximity to consulates and our dignitaries that can help us pretty much anywhere in the world. Now, if you travel to Mexico, knowing their laws are different than ours in their nature. And I'll explain that here in just a second. But knowing the laws, like for instance, if you travel to Mexico and you're under the age of 18, you actually have to have a written permission slip with your parents if you're not traveling with your parents. If you drive over the border in your car, if you do not have a temporary permit, your car can be taken and seized. If you are carrying prescription medicines, even if it is your prescribed medicines, and you go across the border into Mexico, you can be charged with possession of controlled substances. And their laws are a lot different than ours. The reason why their laws are a lot different than ours is because of the control. There's been a lot of people through the years in Mexico that have tried to gain control of the government, trying to gain control because it is such a corrupt government. The federal government, the federal police department in Mexico now is a little different. It has gotten a little bit more professional and a little bit more in control, but there's still a lot of corruption. So understanding laws is very important because their laws are different than ours in this aspect. In Mexico, you are guilty until proven innocent. They have more of a civil law than a common law. And what that means is their laws are by what the words say. Not by, like in ours, we have laws that are based off of what was right or what was wrong, and somebody made a judgment, whether in a court or up to the Supreme Court, and they gave a definition of the law. In Mexico, you're not supposed to do this. If you do that, you're guilty until you're proven innocent. So we have more of a law that we actually can be able to prove that even though the law says we can't do it, there's no logic to that reasoning. And we have to make sure that law enforcement does search and seizures correctly, that everything is collected and presented properly in the courts. In Mexico law, it's not that way. It is by the book, by the words. So you're guilty. Now they do have lawyers, but their lawyers are a little different than ours. Their lawyers are a little different than ours. They don't have to pass a bar exam. All they have to do is go through some schooling and they actually become a lawyer. And so they might not be as proficient at protecting you if you do something wrong across the border. So what the federal government says is if you decide to go there, and go across the border or anywhere, make sure that you know, because in Mexico, if they arrest you, if a police officer in Mexico arrests you, officer does not have to let you talk to the consulate or go to our embassy. If you want to talk to our embassy and you have to request to be able to go do that. So knowing the laws, I will tell you that we see it we've heard about it over and over again. That's why our federal government gives such great, many warnings if you're going to go across the border, to make sure that you follow the laws, because their prisons are not the most pleasant. And if you get found guilty of any crime in Mexico in comparison to the United States, the penalties are usually drastically a lot worse. And in their prisons, they don't have the medical facilities that we have in our prisons to take care of you, and they're not required to. The food is not very good, if there is any of substance at all. And as an American citizen in a Mexican jail, you might have to be paying somebody to protect yourself, to make sure that you're okay. Like I said, this was just a short, brief lesson on why I continue, not as much as, I'm glad Miss Lynn asked me to come back and do this, because I actually had not looked at this lesson for probably 4 years now. And that was the last time, besides the time at Hy-Vee, that I've had to deal with somebody in a policing capacity. There's a great chance that if you do get in any professional field, especially being as a public servant in the medical field, law enforcement, or in fire departments, you are going to come across Spanish-speaking people all the time. So I hope that you guys do continue on this education, so at least you'll have that foundation. Any questions?
All right, what questions do you guys have for me? Either about Spanish or just about police officering.
Do you get paid more?
Do I get paid more as a school resource officer? Or
whenever you were like speaking Spanish?
no, that was just part of our job. It's just part of our job to be able to communicate with anybody and everybody in our society. So I didn't get any bonus money for being able to, like when I went out about a month ago, I didn't get paid anything extra. But I did get the satisfaction of I helped those 2 young men that were involved in the accident actually get some closure and understanding, and the lady whose car was damaged, she was able to get compensated for it. So it was more rewarding than it was financially rewarding. Make sense? Great question. Anybody thinking of being a police officer? I didn't think so either. In fact, when I became a police officer in Liberty, Missouri, I have no idea how in the world I ended up here. Besides, I went to a police academy as a park ranger, and I was top of the police academy. So they gave me the position. When I came back, my friends were like, "You're a what?" I said, "Yeah." They even gave me a gun. Isn't that crazy? And my friends were like, "They gave you a gun." Out of all the people we went to high school with, they gave you a gun. I said, "Yes, and the powers of arrest." It's crazy. Never did I think that 8th grade Spanish, my math actually, I just reconstructed an accident, a train involving a truck in Liberty, and I reconstructed an accident using my math that I learned back in high school and college. My ELA, my English classes, never thought I could not stand reading in high school. Sure, I'm glad I did, because I have to write reports every day to document everything that I do. Everything you guys do in your classes right now, whether it be Spanish, math, history, learning from the past to make the future better, math classes, all those classes, you are building foundations of knowledge that will help you in your future in any career you decide to get into. Those things and these things that you guys are doing right now do make a difference. So try to put some emphasis into it. Find that passion, but stay with the little things, because those little things, you never know. You never know. I never thought Spanish was going to come out until I ended up in that one first time when I was talking to somebody and I was not understanding what they were saying. They weren't understanding what I was saying until they said one key word. And then I was able to communicate with them. So, thank you guys, and I hope you guys